So you know how even 7th round draft picks are underwhelmed by the Chargers wide receiver room? They should feel a complete opposite when it comes to defensive ends, especially after the Bud Dupree signing. So let's take a look at Joe Ortiz's latest move and what it means for the Chargers defense, as well as the players on the bubble. And not to mention their playoff hopes that depend on you subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Also, happy Mother's Day to the 2.9% of women who watch my channel. So let's get to know Bud Dupree a little bit better. Dupree entered the league with the Steelers thanks to having fallen in the draft. He was seen as a fringe top 10 pick and eventually went 22nd overall. His drop was due to him being kind of a controversial pick. He was very athletic and even kind of productive, but his main issue was his lack of instincts. But regardless of his instincts being perhaps not the greatest, his athletic profile was obviously quite good. Coming out of school, NFL.com had him ranked second as an athlete in terms of edge, which makes sense because for one, he ran a 4.56 at almost 270 pounds. To put that in perspective, Nolan Smith the other year wowed people with his 1.52 at almost 240 pounds. So obviously coming to the league, Dupree was a physical specimen, but he wasn't exactly another Chop Robinson. By that I mean a really talented guy who doesn't have any stats to show for it. Dupree actually finished his college career with 25.5 sacks, including 9.5 in his senior season, which was 12 games. This isn't to say that Chop Robinson is a bad prospect, but that Bud Dupree coming to the league wasn't as rough around the edges as some made him out to be. And that maybe some of those instinctual issues could be mitigated by what NFL.com said was the right coordinator. For his first 4 seasons, Dupree was looking like a bust, and that the naysayers were correct. But in his 5th season, he broke out for 11.5 sacks. But even then, the naysayers were saying that was mostly because he was in the right place at the right time, taking advantage of schematic choices and the like. Not to mention that he was still pretty one-dimensional, and despite being 6'4" and 270 pounds, and having the speed and movement skills to cover guys, he wasn't quite strong in that department. Partially due to his size and also instincts, he didn't do great when it came to the run game and setting the edge, which is maybe why the Steelers neglected to give him a long-term contract and instead make him play on a franchise tag. Unlike Le'Veon Bell, he agreed to, and then suffered a season-ending knee injury. He ended up signing a big contract with the Titans, but was released after 2 disappointing seasons. However, he played with Atlanta last year and saw a bit of a rebound. He posted only 6.5 sacks. However, he wasn't playing full-time. Now on a per-snap basis, he was 12th in the league when it comes to sacks per snap. Considering the uptick in production, you'd think there was a bigger market for him this year, but there wasn't. He waited and opted to sign with the team post-May 2nd when comp picks were no longer part of the formula, and chose the Chargers, a team where he might not get that much playing time. He's also not getting that much money. It's going to be worth $6 million to maybe $10 million depending over the course of 2 years, but it's unclear how much of a 2-year contract it really is. So considering he's not going to make a lot of money with the Chargers, and he might not get that much playing time, why did he choose them? To answer that, it might be worth taking a look at the rest of the Chargers defense. The Chargers famously let go of Keenan Allen this offseason. Less famously, they kept both Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. For whatever reason, the Chargers deciding to keep their 2 high-priced defensive ends didn't really move the needle much. But it was a pretty big deal, because they decided to keep a 29-year-old edge rusher in Joey Bosa and a 33-year-old in Khalil Mack. Both of them have an injury history, especially Joey Bosa, and Khalil Mack's age, should make you nervous. But still, they decided to keep them. And that's because if they stay healthy next year, they're going to be a fearsome duo, especially with the Jesse Minter defense. And the best part is, they don't necessarily have to stay healthy for the defense to still function pretty well. With Thule coming into his 2nd year, as well as now Bud Dupree, and who knows, maybe Chris Rumph will factor in, but more on that in a bit. The point being here, they have a really good rotation now of edges that you could comfortably say rivals any in the league. And it makes more sense for a guy like Bud Dupree, who probably would like to score at least one more big deal before he retires. And the Chargers make sense for him in that case. You can foresee a scenario where he's getting the easy sacks that Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa get for him by being double teamed, or if he's able to get on the field when they're not on. In either scenario, it's a good showcase for him. And like the aforementioned Chris Rumph, he's unlikely to factor in much either. Maybe there's some optimism that the Jim Harbaugh weight room chicanery can have a effect for the good when it comes to Rumph, but any optimism there would probably be not well placed. It's just hard to believe that a guy who gets nicknamed String Bean by his own teammate will be able to develop much muscle mass, unless of course he started working with Alex Guerrero, but that's a whole other potentially problematic thing. Not to mention the Chargers didn't really do much in the draft or with the undrafted free agents when it came to edge. The closest thing was a Justin Boybe, but he's more likely to factor in as tweener, kind of like Morgan Fox. Same thing with Thule, really. He's much less of a tweener, but he's not going to be taking away as many snaps since he's going to be playing more standing up. I think beyond the fact the situation's good with the Chargers in terms of playing time and whatnot, the real reason why I probably took such a small deal when it came to the money side of things is because the Chargers look like a contender. That might seem crazy to some, but it's really not. Obviously, the Chargers went 5-12 last year, which makes sense considering Justin Herbert missed so many games and played through a significant injury throughout most of the season as well. But even with the healthy Justin Herbert, knock on wood, many aren't so optimistic about the Chargers' upcoming season. Probably because they don't really have the greatest wide receivers, and the O-line, despite adding Joe Alt, still has some interesting kind of pieces that are kind of up in the air. Like, it's unclear what they're going to be doing at guard or center, and there may be some major shakeups coming. But either way, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to the offense. That said, with Justin Herbert, they're going to be able to push the ball when they want to, and with Greg Roman, you know you're going to get at least a good running game. So considering they're probably going to have a, at worst, league average offense, the defense should be actually quite better than it. On paper, the best part of the team, definitely defensive end. Obviously, they have two superstars like Mack and Bosa. But as Tyler Schoen points out, current edge 3 and edge 4 combined for 89 pressures and 16 sacks last season. To put that in perspective, the New York Giants and their first and second edge rusher combined for 14 sacks. And sure, the defensive tackles aren't the strongest room, but they will benefit from being around so many talented edge rushers. And I know Bosa is someone who a lot of Chargers fans have given up on, but the hope being that a guy like Ben Herbert can finally get him healthy. And even in an injury-riddled season like last year, he still had 6.5 sacks in 9 games. The linebacker room has some questions because of, they do have a rookie in Junior Colson, and then aging veteran like Denzel Perriman. But I think Junior Colson probably won't have much trouble transitioning considering he's going to be playing for the same coordinator he did in college. And, if I had a gambling sponsorship, I definitely would be pointing out that Junior Colson would be a pretty good bet for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Of course, that leaves the secondary, which does leave something to be desired. It's understandable if you're a bit dubious of the Chargers considering that they've got Asante Samuel, Christian Fulton, and Tarheeb Still, who, you could call a ragtag group for sure. However, the safeties are in a way better place. Derwin James is probably going to return to star form under Harbaugh, and Alohi Gilman has proven to be a very solid player. And of course, a guy like JT Woods probably is a very likely candidate to be cut sometime in the near future, maybe even training camp. But as I pointed out in my video on the Chargers UDFAs, the Chargers clearly went after the best ranked ones available, so they're considering safety to be a very important part of the secondary for their defense. But with what's going to be likely a very strong pass rush, it's going to mitigate whatever issues they have when it comes to their corners. So even with whatever perceived weaknesses the defense has, they do have a really big strength in one area, and that's going to go a long way. The edge position is that important. I mean, all you have to do is look at Bud Dupree and the fact that he was still able to get a really big contract after having an ACL injury. If Le'Veon Bell had suffered the ACL injury, there's no way he would have gotten that contract from the Jets. And it should come as no surprise that most odds makers have the Chargers at 8.5 wins and finishing second in the AFC West. 9 wins may or may not be enough to get into the playoffs, but with this latest edition, I think that number should be getting bumped up. And I also think you should subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thanks again for watching.